Welcome, one and all, to another exciting episode of ARV 161. This time we're going to talk about how to put some of these concepts into action. I'm your host, John Woodson. Show my lovely face right quick. Hi. Wow, it's oversaturated. This is called oversaturation. If your screen looks like mine. All right, so let me start with the correct PowerPoint. CRAPU design. You like that? CRAPU. It's a way, it's an acronym for contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. CRAPU. We've learned a whole bunch of stuff about design elements. Now, how do we use them? So we concentrate on some of that, some of the principles of design. Starting with CRAP. We know what contrast is by now. Repetition, alignment, proximity. And if you do this correctly, you'll have a unified design, a unified message. Contrast, think differences, like how the black contrasts against the blue and the white here. It's easy to read. Are the contrast and size of these words. Need some kerning here, don't I, with differences. So contrast, as we discussed, strike of the state of being strikingly different. That's a dictionary definition. But we know what contrast is. And contrast is more important than color, as we talked about earlier. So we got good contrast with these two, but man, they jiggle, don't they? Contrast is not just about color, as I mentioned in earlier lessons. It can be two or more visual elements. Right? The contrast of the size of this rectangle as opposed to the larger rectangle. In design, we use contrast to generate impact, high importance, create exciting graphics, and create visual interest and dynamics. Contrast tells the viewer where to look first. Where did your eye land on this first one? Probably the big circle. How about here? Probably the large rectangle. Contrast deals with the difference of the art elements used. And contrast is used in graphic design as we do. It's also used in fine arts. You can use it in photography. You can use it for advertising a campaign, or you can use it for a photo shoot, or you can paint a lovely picture with it. Here's contrast, black versus white, orange versus blue, warm versus cool in the photo. Contrast in shape, contrast in scale or size, contrast in layout. That one up here on the right is pretty important, isn't it? Contrast in text and type. No, I'm not going to read all of this to you verbatim. You can read, and you need to read these PowerPoints before you take the test. Test contrasts are a key point for website accessibility. That you know what you should look at first. It's like an outline, titles, a newspaper. Those of you who've actually seen one will have the headline and then the lower print as you go down. You can have fatigue if you don't mix it up a little bit. You ever just read something that looked all the same? After a while, your eyes get tired. You also lose interest. Because part of what we do is try to engage the audience to pay attention to the whole thing. You don't do that a very good job of that, Woodson. I'm sorry. I could drone on. Bueller. Anyway, if you haven't watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you need to, because that's what that's from. If you look at traditional forms of contrast, we do have size and color, spacing, shape. So which one of these newsletters is better? Now you see the one on the left, you see that all the time. You see that all the time. The one on the right, a little easier to read. It's not necessarily easier, it's the same font. It's more engaging. And also you can guide people to what they really care about. Like if one of these subheads was some kind of meeting that you wouldn't attend because you're not that demographic, then you might not even read it. So I would go with the one on the right. Which one of these makes a better use of contrast? Oh, I can hear you all. You all got it right. Because it's the one on the left. Contrast in size. Now, contrast in size can be, big and small. It can also give us an illusion of depth here. I mean, if you look at this for a while, it looks like a line of eyes from small to large. But then you look at it, it looks like a row of columns, and you're standing here in front of they can all be the same size. You're standing here, and especially if we put a line under it, more size there. Contrast in placement. Where you place something. What did you look at first in this 80s looking design? What'd your eyes go? The one that fell off down here. What about that one? Where'd your eyes land on each of these? Contrast in placement is very important. Contrast in texture. There's an LL Bean that uses that very effectively. A couple of photographs that look really, very nice. Contrast using visual weight, where you place things. We talked about synchronous and asynchronous balance, imbalance, that sort of thing. Contrast in the size of the font from the heavy bold to the very thin, or is that a short bed? All good illustrations of using visual weight. How about that? And of course, as I said earlier in earlier lessons, contrast is not color. It's not just color. Repetition, being consistent, repetition, because if you have different things, it's not really repeating it, is it? Saying different words, is not repetition. Saying the same thing over and over again, saying the same thing over and over again, saying the same thing over and over again without stumbling. It is repetition, being consistent. Here's some examples of repetition, pattern, and rhythm. Patterns are a form of repetition. Rhythm, you need repetition to have rhythm. Now, if I clap just, there's no repetition there. A little bit of rhythm, maybe. For example, it's possible to create a rhythm by repeating certain elements throughout your design. We see that here with this design. Several things are repeated. That white swoosh is a repeat. This one's right side up, that one's upside down, or vice versa. The shape of the blue, these little islands, movement. It looks like it's moving. That's even though we know those pencils are not a wave, it looks like a wave, doesn't it? Looks like it could be moving. Looks like that's falling. This is called Nude Descending a Staircase. Very famous um, painting from 1912. And it's called a nude Descending the Staircase. And if you look at it long enough, you can go, yeah, I can kind of see that figure in that form now. So Marcel Duchamp didn't just throw this together. There's thought in it. There's planning. There's shape. There's repetition in it. Even though this looks like a mixture of different shapes and everything, there's enough repetition in it to make it look like, yeah, something, there's movement going on here. There's, where there's some kind of form here. That form is moving. You can see kind of a face here. You look at the more you look at it, the more you see parts of the human body done in a this type of art. Of course, that's repetition. More repetition. Target uses a lot of it, and it does give unity. Now you want repetition because you want each one of your headlines to use the same font. So which one of these is better? Yeah, that one. And you probably want to use the same font and font families for the print. Now you might have a different reason for emphasis, but I think to make it overall the same and give it unity, you definitely want to have your headlines the same. Now, like if hormone nurture, I cannot read today. Hormone nurture. If you could come up with a font that represented that, I cannot think one off the top of my head. It might be kind of cool to change this one in the middle for some emphasis. But like I said, if you break the rules, if you know what they are, you want all the elements to be consistent most of the time. Like it all belongs together. Especially in a multi-page document, you want it to look like it all belongs together. So if you found these two pages separated, it might be pretty easy, even without the page numbers, to figure out that they go together. You found a pile of different paper. Now the text on this is basically gibberish. However, it looks like it all belongs together. Father, your hearses, Jess Woodson, Thursday. You're a kin leader, hearse to wander, warder. Kind of like that for some reason. So what elements should be repeated? Well, here's an idea of that. Look this over, come back and look at it. And you're definitely going to want to do this when you're doing your resume. Some different ideas for some letterhead for mom and pop corner grocery store. They're different ideas, but they have consistency. They have repetition. What these two do, those dots. And web design. This is, I think this is still up on the Tri-County Tech site. It's kind of old now. These people are probably ready for retirement. Seriously, it's been a while since they took this photo. And you can see some of the elements we've already talked about here. Now, some of this has changed, but you want things in a way that you can navigate it. Ease of use. Programs career programs, transfer programs, dual enrollment, and see how it kind of leads you from one to the other. But the arrow, of course, you're going to follow the arrow, but also the columns, the large print. Without the arrows, you might go down, 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 up and down, back and forth. And in the West, who read left to right anyway. Alignment. Remember that? We'll kind of zoom through this because we talked a lot about alignment in an earlier unit. Nothing should be placed on a page or screen randomly unless you have a reason. Every item on the page should be a visual connection to something else on the page. Remember that graphic a few slides ago? I said it looked like an 80s kind of thing where the triangle was falling off the other triangles. Even though that looked like it was kind of randomly placed there, it still had a connection to the other shapes because it looked like the other shapes. So there was a visual connection, even though it looked random. It wasn't random. It was by design. Find a strong line and use it. You use alignment, line elements along the same path. You can help. Let me try that again. This is not a good day to read. When you align elements along the same path, you can help them feel associated with each other, making it easier to scan with other similar content around, like this. Now, I'm not going to read all this to you, but I want you to read it. Okay? Come back and read this. I'm not going to read it to you. Some of this will be on the test. Nothing boring than me reading to you. All right. So, which one looks like a design? Well, this one really doesn't. This one's more of a design. It looks like it was placed this way. The only thing that didn't change were these two squares at the bottom. They're in about the same place. So this one's properly aligned. This one's not properly aligned. It says mixed alignment. And again, there might be a reason. You might have an illustration right here. Do you feel all mixed up? We'll try our product and we'll align you up. Again, if you want to know how to break the rules, you need to know the rules. Alignment is manipulating space, using spacing to direct the user, just like this slide does for you. Read it on your own. White space is a term used to describe the negative spacing between elements in a design. We talked about that a couple of units ago, didn't we? So here, this quib. Now, this is something I got in the past. I don't know if they've changed it. But that's a good idea with the floss and the handle. On Quib's website below, you'll notice that the spacing around the text on the left and the other elements around it, so they've got that pushed over there. The use of white space as emphasis for everything else. Which one's better? Now, you'll see them lined up like this, but I think this is probably going to be the one that people kind of will like and react to better for this Mermaid Tavern in London, New Mexico. Mom and Pop again. Which one do you like the best? That's very traditional and old-fashioned looking. So maybe for Mom and Pop, that might be good. It's still aligned, nothing random. The main important thing, the name of the store, their logo's right there. Pop left Mom in this one. It would look weird to have Pop there because he'd be out of line. You can Pop right here underneath. Everything's aligned, but the one on the left is probably going to be the one you see as the title page. Which one's better alignment? They've got alignment. This is justified down the middle. This one. And if you could get the most important point, and I don't know what this is, what says, what if you could lined up with this big thing that kind of points at it, that's really a bonus. Proximity, grid design. We perceive objects that are close together as belonging in the same group. A related law, the law of common fate, says that we perceive objects moving in the same direction as part of the same group. So these look like they belong. And that poor little cheese it in the middle is going to be, I guess this is a form of cannibalism, isn't it? Okay. Based on proximity, which group of circles looks like they belong together? You can make the argument that these look like they belong together, but it's not proximity. It's repetition. It's not even spacing, really, because it's uneven. More proximity. See the way this is set up? You see the shape of the Coca-Cola bottle? You could take Coca-Cola off of there and you would know what that was. Well, I keep bringing up Coca-Cola as an example because they are so good at it. Now, notice the background graphic. It's all, you know, just that's like you dropped your Skittles on the floor. Also, notice how pixelated it is. So the graphic I chose here, I enlarged it beyond its ability to enlarge. So that's also bad. But that's kind of the point. This is not good unless you work something in between it. Then it looks like it's, you could, if you could work something in between it, you could say that looked like a path almost. But right now it's just spilled Skittles. In this example, now watch it. It moves. It's magic. Before the elements move closer to each other, it's difficult for your eye to easily scan the content. It's just kind of boom, everything's now you can. Because the photograph is who took the photograph's not that important for the content. You want to give credit where credit's due. Photographers get credit. It's a pretty nice looking hamburger there. Proximity, closeness implies relationship by grouping. These are two different groupings, but they're not exactly the same, but they all look like they belong together because they're so close. The other circles I showed you a few minutes ago, the three circles, one part looked good because of the closeness, and the other side just didn't look right. So here is a business card for Wile E. Coyote, genius. I hope you've seen those cartoons. They probably didn't let you when you were a kid. Uh, this is a very bad business card. This is better. Proximity equals grouping or chunking. Shows structure and organization. Threads parts into manageable units. Grouping creates visual cohesion that pulls the parts together. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but group related items together. Which one is better? Probably this one on the left. Excuse me, the right. I need to write that on my hand. Avoid grouping unrelated items. Of course, if you're doing that for emphasis, like, well, the green tomato was related to the tomatoes because it was tomato, but it was a different color. So that was for emphasis. No proximity, proximity. Also easy to read. This page has a lot of text, not much visual variation. As a result, readers won't be able to draw any particular, and you're going to lose interest. This is better. This is even better. Which one of these is better? I think the one on the bottom. Regina phalanges. Fingers. Regina fingers. I think this is much better. And the most important element is the phone number and the email. And you do need the address because you'll probably go there. It's hard to get your nails did online. But the main thing is the logo and her contact information. So you can call, make an appointment. That all has to do with positioning, proximity, and everything else we discussed so far. Unity. It could be a little more centered, couldn't it? What a good example of unity. I think ultimately unity is perhaps the most important part of design because you want it all to belong together. If you have a chaotic design, it's usually not going to work. The things are all over the place. Read this about unity. Why is unity, the unity principle of design, important? As I've said, it's arguably the most important principle of design. It guides the designer on how to best leverage all the other principles so they work harmoniously as a whole into a message that can be understood by all the parts in it. Without unity, it's chaotic. It feels unintentionally segmented, confusing, and in worst cases, unusable, or difficult to use, or unreadable, or uninteresting. If it's all over the place and chaotic, it might be interesting for a minute, but it's not a good way to deliver a message. How do you achieve unity? That's something we humans are very good at, personally, but we're pretty good at it when it comes to design. As previously mentioned, unity is achieved once the design has reached the state of harmony between all of its internal parts. And this is done by first going through each of the other design principles to assess how they are being used within the overall design to ensure each element is having its intended and desired effect. So each of these rectangles look like they belong together. And as a result of them all being good examples, they look like they belong together. There's a message here, especially considering what we talked about already. Van Gogh again. Unity. This beautiful example of unity. Visual harmony. Everything works together. Now, how about emphasis for unity? Focal point. Good design must have a primary focal point or center of interest. And you try to get your message, your call to action, close to that focal point. Instead of tomatoes, we have an apple and we flip the red and the green, haven't we? He don't feel so good, or he's radioactive, but the goldfish, others are worried. What did they put in our bowl? Focal point for unity. Here's a good rule. Have one. First part of the work that grabs your attention is the focal point. And look at this painting here. I looked right here, not just because she has her behinds there, but that's where my eyes went because it's like a big circle in the middle. And but it also leads you with her arms poking out to the rest of the story here. Let's go dancing on the beach. We should bring the maid and the butler. What's the focal point here? this iris here on her dress. Of course, her lovely smile, even everything. She's got her head tilted. You got the nose, the mouth, the chin pointing down the iris, and then this leads to the elbow, to the hand, over to the spring sail. Create emphasis by using other elements to direct the eye for emphasis, like this. All the elements lead to spring sail. Contrast creates differences of defined emphasis. Grouping of items creates emphasis. Isolation of elements creates emphasis. Balance for unity refers to the arrangement of the artwork in a way that does not allow any one element to overpower another. And a lot of people want to overpower, use that. I mean, they don't do that properly. You'll have a sense of equilibrium. As you've seen already, you can make somebody dizzy with a still design, still drawing. So yeah, that kind of equilibrium, but we're really talking about the equilibrium of balance, like symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial, which we talked about in an earlier unit. Sense of equilibrium, establishing balance, consider visual weight created by size, color, texture, number of objects, things we've talked about already. Really, what we're talking about here is how to use what you've learned. So you got two scales here. The one on the left is the symbol of justice, still a scale, very formal looking, symmetrical. Justice is supposed to be equal until you put the person on there and charges on the other side. Excuse me. Asymmetrical, even though it's balanced, you've got visual asymmetry because of the pills compared to the fruit there. That's a cool design. Very symmetrical. Radial design. Proportion for unity or size and scale. Gives you a little vision of depth there with a C-class saloon. That's what the British call a sedan. Saloon. Proportion is simply the scale of each individual object in a design. Read that. Read that. Very famous drawing by Leonardo da Vinci, illustrating, well, the size of and outline of the human body. Vitruvian Man. Always forget its real name. It's raining ping pong balls. The size and shape. Are they all the same size and at different depths? Or are they small ones and big ones? I think the shadow lets us know they're small and big, probably more than real depth here, although it can give an illusion of either. You have a reference point, this tree that looks a lot like broccoli. So we know the man is probably not the same size as the tree unless the tree's just been planted. So which one is further away from the tree? Easier to tell now, isn't it? Which one's closer to the tree? Either that or a very tiny man. Beautiful. Classic. Um, combining nearly all the elements we talked about. So to review, we're talking about CRAPU, contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity, unity. All of this for emphasis. Unity, we've got emphasis, focal point, balance, proportion. All right, good. Now let me come back over here and close that out. And I want to talk a little bit about the assignments. So you have a PowerPoint that goes with the assignments, and I'm not going to go over that with you right now for one of the assignments, not all of them. Let me share this screen. All right, that's the PowerPoint I just went over. There are the assignments. There's your study guide. There's the test. But in the assignments, got 1, 2, 3 assignments. I didn't number those correctly. Actually, this is not an assignment. This is one of those reflection quiz essays. So what you need to do for that is read this article, understanding how to use Unity and Variety and graphic design. It too is a review of everything we've done so far. And it really helps emphasize its emphasis on what we've discussed already and how it's used, how it can be used in design. And then after you read that, take this quiz, and that'll count toward the classroom reflection quizzes grade. And then you'll have this create a lyric poster. Lyric posters are cool. And if you know how to use PowerPoint or InDesign, feel free to use those. You will attach the assignment to this assignment when you turn it in, okay? If it says somewhere in here, and I tried to change it where it said it, to put it in your class folder, because this is an online class, you don't have a class folder. So attach the assignment to this assignment. Attach what you finish and name it the way it's supposed to be named. But there is a PowerPoint instructing you. Now, if you use Express, I started to do a brand new one for Express, but Express changes every 5 minutes. So it's also pretty easy and intuitive. So I'm going to let you, and it's also time, by this time in the class, you should know how to use it. So I didn't do that. But the PowerPoint does give you basic instructions. So if it shows you something that's no longer in Express, don't be surprised. But there's probably something equals it, or they just moved it. If you really can't find it, my office is in Fulp 106. My office hours are in Starfish. I'll be happy to help you. That's the way to really make sure. I've had a couple people try to come see me and send me emails, and we still just missed each other. One time it was my fault. The other time he just didn't show up for one person. But yeah, that's a fun assignment, and you can do something simple, and also you can make faces out of the lyrics. There's some examples in that PowerPoint. You're also going to do political and social issues for social media posts, and there's a PowerPoint for that. Now, let me say this. We live in a very divided time, and people can take messages that are meant in good faith and good humor in the wrong way very easily. So there's a challenge to this. The issues that you're going to be making these graphics for can be very polarizing, but we want to make something that is more unifying, something that's not trying to convince someone to do anything, but to be aware. So don't use your personal political views. Consider this for a broad audience, where there's going to be people on both sides of these issues. And then, of course, people that don't give a rat's patootie about these issues. How do you reach all those people? Well, you have to come up with a message for a broad audience. And there's still going to be, let me tell you this from personal experience, no matter how much you try to walk on eggshells, somebody these days is going to find offense. They might find a fence too, but they'll find it offensive because they knee jerk. That's against what I believe. Oh no, it's not. We're just saying, hey, like what's climate change? So you may not believe in that, but there's something happening, and at least be aware that pumping CO2 in the atmosphere in great uh, bulk is not good. I mean, we've proven that with pollution. So you're making something that is going to be like, hey, just be aware and make it look nice and use these principles of unity, create a unified message. You're not going to unify the country necessarily, but you can make people aware. All right? Follow the instructions on the PowerPoint. And that's it for this week. The deadlines are listed in the assignments. So let me get out of this. Stop share. And y'all take care. Get your work done. Oh, by the way, I want to say one more thing. This is an online class, and there are deadlines. This is not a work at your own pace class. You've got usually at least 1 week, sometimes two, to take care of this. Check the deadlines to see how long you have. So that's so you can put it off to, I make my deadlines at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, so I can start brand new on Monday. And I start counting it late when I come in and start grading these things. If it's not in my if it's not there when I sit down to grade it, or if it came in super late, I'm going to take off a whole letter grade. So it's due 11:59, but when I come in on Monday morning and start grading, or when I get to it that morning, but if it's Tuesday before it's turned in, yeah, it's definitely going to get counted as late. If it's Monday afternoon, if you do it first thing Monday morning before I look at it, yeah, I'll take it. All right. I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but you've got to learn deadlines in this business. Deadlines are of the utmost importance. All right. Take care and get your work done and do good work.